So yeah, we are subjected to surveillance, and a lot of the surveillance is absolutely essential if we are to be secure in what we do. So we're being observed by the parties who have access and use our information. We're also being observed constantly for cybersecurity reasons, so that we aren't one of the bad people. We're constantly under surveillance. Where does this all go? And instead of just going through the slides, I'll leave it for you all to download later. And this is not so much a presentation as a provocation. What do good people do about trajectories of where technology goes? What do we do as citizens? How should we add our voice to what should be done? Now, a lot of good work has been done in the area of data privacy, and there are lots of rules about that. But the future cone diagram that I particularly use and like is about where things could go and what is our preferred trajectory, rather than what might just happen by default. So the question to you all is, what do you all think should be just go back a bit, okay? What is our preferable future for data privacy and surveillance? And as I mentioned, lots of laws, good laws, regulations about data privacy. So my question here is more about surveillance. Next slide, please. We are being looked at all the time. The other day I was walking through a shopping center and I wanted to make a donation, and they wanted to know who I was, what I was doing, my date of birth, all kinds of other stuff. All I wanted to do was put some money in a box. But for digital contributions, my privacy was being invaded, and people were going to use that data for whatever other surveillance. Now, as a CTO and working in a super fund, there's a lot of cybersecurity work I had to do dealing with the bad guys who are constantly out there. Now, it meant that we were tracking people in a general way, noting patterns in their behavior and that kind of thing. And that kind of thing is okay. But because of the pandemic, we did things like lots more online work. And when we go online and people were working from computers at home, I could note in a far greater level of detail how many hours they spend at their computers, how many keystrokes they put in, what they did, how much they were looking at the camera or not. Now, my company was one of the good, and they didn't really track all that kind of information. But lots of businesses now do that to their people. Where formerly you'd spend time at the office, walk up to someone, say hello, have a coffee, have a chat. But when you're sitting at home in front of the machine, everything is far more trackable. Another question about surveillance and data is, to what level would people's mobile phones have been tracked during the pandemic to ensure that you were within the 5 km range? Now, I'm not going down any rabbit holes with conspiracy theories or whatever else have you. I don't know how much you'll follow what's happening in China with their social credit system and the recent social credit laws, which came out this month about rating people, not just their financial credit, but who they meet with, all that kind of thing. And then, of course, an emphasis here is on the whole online marketing and business systems, which really are unfettered in the way they interact with us. And there is almost no reciprocity with us. And there's an indifference towards the collective good rather than, let's say, mere economic good. And again, I'm emphasizing surveillance as an unnecessary or insidious thing rather than good surveillance. You want the bad guys to be tracked. You want them to be noted. Next slide, please. A lot of technology worldview is neutral. And we know that there is no such thing as neutral. It's financially driven or power driven, as is the default case for most of this kind of generalized human behavior. But it also lends itself to highly monopolistic behavior, whether from the government or individual corporations. Like, you know, how many really gigantic search engines are there? How many really big, you know, sales or goods delivery systems are there? Or you know, online auction systems. So monopolies then create and concentrate power. And as Christians, we need to ensure that our worldview does go out there and impact society for the common good. Or the default happens, barriers are raised, surveillance happens in greater and greater amounts, because people are thinking defensively and wanting to be safe. And next slide, please. So this rather dramatic picture is, you know, emphasizes the point that we can and ought to be doing things as Christians. We cannot just sit down and do nothing. One has to be active in this area, and conferences such as this are just absolutely essential for churning things up and helping us to stand back and talk to other like-minded people about what we should be advocating and what we should be doing. The next slide, please. The last slide is you know, books that I would suggest that people read. There's this one in particular about free speech and about surveillance capitalism and about yes, modern technology and the human future. So where I've come at these things from is a combination of future studies and practical experience as a technologist, putting systems into place for the common good. That's it from me. Happy to answer any questions.
We have the floor from the field.
I've got an idea of what you're calling big data.
Yes.
What's your meaning of it?
Big data is what happens when companies aggregate data from all kinds of places, and including your random visits to other websites rather than their own. And all of that is aggregated together, and your behavior, online behavior, is recorded, noted, and fed back to you. So you may go in and just do something online, and all of a sudden you think, how did that ad come at me? And that's caused by big data in the background, aggregated data at a colossal level, coupled with, you know, smart software algorithms that respond to that data and use it.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned about the cameras on your computer, whether you
Yes.
is that only when the camera is actually activated?
Yes.
Or is that at all times?
When the camera is activated. However, there are lots of smart hackers who could activate your camera even if you thought it was off. But what I was referring to quite specifically is, you know, when people shifted to working at home, they had to have their cameras on to work using Zoom for meetings and things like that. So your software could then track your eyeball movement and how focused you were at meetings or not, and whether you responded appropriately or not. And when you use something as normal as Microsoft Word, the level of reporting that Microsoft now puts in the hands of systems administrator. Well, it always did, but it's much more concentrated now. You could look at keystrokes and how productive someone was or not. And that happened, didn't happen with pre-pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or any from people online? Yes, sorry.
I was going to ask, like, what would you say one takeaway in terms of direct action for Christians? What should we specifically be doing? Yeah.
Well, at two levels. So first of all, take heart from what's being done for privacy regulations and law. So there, companies have to be very formal and strict with your data, what they do with it, letting you know how they use it. And that's more to do with personal data, your date of birth, your medical records, that kind of thing, your tax file number. There's a great formality around how they handle that. But surveillance data, much less so. And that should be formalized at the same level as personal data. So personal data you could treat as static, and then your behavioral data. So what can you do? Make your voice heard in government forums. When groups get together to speak up for broader data privacy, join your voice to them. And there's a lot of good stuff happening, but a lot more to be done. And regulations are always at least one step behind the pace at which technology moves.
Next question, how do we balance catching the bad guys with ensuring personal privacy?
Well, constantly emphasizing the good is what I think ought to be done. So in my role, I needed to be careful that, data didn't go missing from where we work. So we educated and informed people so people know that they've been tracked or they are undergoing surveillance. But at the same, so there's an element of education and openness about it. So making people aware is a good thing, but the technological utopia that we have almost gives godlike powers, and we've got to know and bear that in mind always, that we are being watched.
Mm.
So no easy answer.
Next question. What are some of the thoughts on the surveillance situation in Australia, and what are some areas Christians need to be aware of or actioned upon?
I'd answer that by saying, Western society in general, rather than just Australia. So I've been speaking a lot about online privacy and online data, but surveillance also spreads to camera systems, tracking you as you walk along, and things like that. The bad guys know how to circumvent these things. It's the good people that are observed all of the time. So as a society, we have to constantly balance that within our organizations, within our cities, and within our legal systems.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Does a VPN system fix everything?
No. It's helpful under some circumstances.
Right.
But if you were working at your office and you had a VPN on the side, you'd make me very suspicious if you were doing it during work time.
Yes.
With surveillance, during COVID, you were supposed to have your phone, and when you went to a restaurant, you scanned so that people knew you were there, so that you could be told if it was a COVID hotspot.
Yeah.
And that data was supposed to be deleted 25 days later.
Yes.
Rumours has it wasn't. The government kept that data long after they promised it would be deleted. Is that one of the concerns, and what sort of can be done to ensure that things like that, say surveillance only has a life of so many months or whatever, and then it's got to be deleted?
Good point. In general, almost no one gives up data because it's so valuable. So most businesses now chant the mantra that data is a corporate asset and it's the most precious thing we have, because that's the source of wealth. And data is the source of wealth for Google or Facebook. They're going to give it up, you're going to have to take it out of their cold, dead hands.
I think with government, you're always wondering whether it's malevolence or just incompetence. Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Carl.